We're going to be looking at the first of three artists that are most renowned for during the High Italian Renaissance. And the first of these three is Leonardo da Vinci, and probably the most well-known of the artists, and really one of the most well-known artists of history worldwide. This is a name that is well-known. We're going to be looking at some of the key artwork that Da Vinci created, and you guys have already done some reading in the Scholastic magazines to get a better understanding of who Da Vinci was. So we're just going to be doing a little review, and then I'll add some more to what you should already have learned. We know that Leonardo was the oldest of the three artists of Michelangelo and then Raphael. He was known to be quick to boredom. He had very short attention span. He was left-handed and ambidextrous. So he could, even within the notes in his notebooks that he kept, thousands of pages of documenting everything that he came across as he was going for walks or studying anatomy, all of those things that we've been learning about. He was able to, many times he would write backwards. So it was a mirror image. In order to read it, you'd have to put a mirror up to it. He was known to be extremely curious. He collected everything. Very sort of maybe even quirky personality that can come with that sort of interest. He was known to wander the countryside, so he developed a love of nature. He a love of drawing botanical drawings, and then also he would even draw dead animals that he would come across. So really everything was fair game for him. He had just such a curious mind, like a sponge. Along with that, though, came, a strong personality. And he was most notably disliked by Pope Sixtus IV. He was shunned, actually, by the Pope for not producing art for recognition. And what that really should speak to you is that Da Vinci was not in it for the fame or glory. And during this time, the Pope, who was the leader of the Catholic Church, pretty much was responsible for commissioning most of the work that we're going to be seeing, because work was primarily done for the church, and that's what would kind of pay the most and have the most consistent sort of work. But Da Vinci refused to do any of the work, no matter how much he was pressured into doing so, and sort of had a mind of his own, we could say. The first work that we're going to be looking at is Leonardo da Vinci's Virgin of the Rocks. And the images that we're seeing here, they're actually, interestingly enough, there are two of these versions that are painted. And there's going to be a link here provided that you can check this out a little bit more through Khan Academy. But these are were painted within a few years of each other. The version that you're seeing here on the left is the one that was painted first, and it's in the Louvre. And these two paintings are a good place to start looking at how to define the qualities of this new style of the High Renaissance. He painted both of these in Milan, where he had moved to from Florence. What we should notice here is that we have this idea of a pyramidal composition. So if you take, you can follow my mouse here, the crown of Mary's head, and we go down to the right, this fabric, or even here, this corner, and then we also go to the left. And we could go one more corner, maybe down to the little figure here, the hand. We connect that, we have a pyramid. This was the most structurally sound way to compose objects in a painting. And you'll see this is a common theme through all three artists. Visually pleasing to the eye. We have also this term chiaroscuro and sfumato. I will be defining those for you here in a minute. Before we look at those technical terms, I just want to also break down and look at the paintings here and give you a backstory. These are coined as Madonnas, and a Madonna is basically any image that depicts Mary. These are devotional rather than narrative. The older version on the left here, and the newer version on the right, this one is located in London. You can see that the one is brighter than the other. One, if you are looking at this closely, you can see there are halos. So on the right, you can just see these faint outlines of halos. And you also have the figure with a cross. The little baby here on the left has a cross. But also the difference is the angel here on the right is not pointing, whereas she's pointing over here. This is the story of Mary and Jesus fleeing Egypt to save Jesus from King Herod. Take a minute and I want you to think about if you can figure out who Mary is, who Jesus is. We also have another baby, John the Baptist, in the scene, and then there's an angel. So Mary is the figure at the top that's kneeling. She has her hand protectively floating over the form of the baby here. This is Christ. Christ is holding in his hands up, actually his pointer and middle finger in the sign of a blessing. He's praying or blessing those around him, specifically John the Baptist. So John the Baptist is his cousin. He's in a prayer sort of body positioning. The angel here on the right with the red and green, you notice the differences too. On the right, this is now turned into more of a blue robe. She has her fingers pointing towards Christ. So you have actually everything is drawing you in towards kind of in a circular motion, pointing towards John the Baptist and then back around towards Christ. There's a body of water in the background. You'll see this a common sort of theme with this very sort of murky, I'm going to say mysterious, but just a very unique landscape. These cavernous caves. They were representing the refuge they found in the Sinai desert. This was the miraculous first meeting between Jesus and John the Baptist. Now, sfumato. You see sfumato being used here. This is derived from fumo, meaning smoke. This is a technique of oil painting which colors or tones are blended in such a subtle manner that they melt into each other, almost like butter melting. The application of the lines and edges as they're transitioned and blended typically involves a number of translucent glazes to create a gradual tonal spectrum from dark to light. So again, edges are blurred. We can see that most notably in the forms. If you look at the figures themselves, everything is just very, very smooth. There are no hard edges. It's very sort of smoky, hazy sort of feel. And then the term chiaroscuro, this is the Italian for light to dark, describes a prominent contrast of light and shade in a painting, drawing, or print, and the skill demonstrated by the artist in the management of shadows to create the illusion of three-dimensional forms. And looking back, we see that in the fabric folds. We see that in the high contrast of even the light that seems to be shining on these figures. A lot of bright highlight contrasting with dark shadows.